reputation in general, parts of the reputation system, some things that are currently in place today on major web apps. And then I was looking at a paper recently, and it's about, 10 years old. And this is an idea of sort of an eBay reputation type replacement where you sort of purchase transaction insurance. So this is a way to make sure that the buyers and sellers are protected, but also a way for sort of insurers to make money on premiums. How you'd implement this and simplify it on Ethereum, and some variants and references, and maybe some time for Q&A at the end. A lot of people ask, what is a cryptocurrency? So, there's some stock answers up at the top, things that we've all heard of, but what it really boils down to, just like BitTorrent, just like Reddit, we're talking about communities. In some cases they're real communities, in some cases they're virtual communities. And communities have certain things that they have in common. Usually they have a tight or a very loose set of common interests, goals, and desired behaviors. And I believe that's true of the Bitcoin community. I believe that's true of the Dogecoin community. I think that's true of our community. I'm sure that's true of BitTorrent. And so reputation has a role to play in shaping the behavior and incentivizing the behavior of these communities. So it's not, every person for himself. I mean, we're part of a community. We have some things in common. So, broadly speaking, it's a very big tent. There are a lot of diverse people, especially in cryptocurrency. But generally speaking, most of us want our crypto assets to gain in value. We want to be able to freely and privately transact, not necessarily anonymously, but at least privately. Most cryptocurrency advocates, want to cut out the middleman, and there's a lot to be gained by cutting out the traditional middleman. The brokers, the bankers, the insurance agents, the local government. If everyone's taking a slice of the pie on a transaction, there's very little left for the buyer and the seller. Two critical things at the bottom, though. We're seeking to minimize the loss and risk of default when we're doing a transaction. And of course, we're trying to avoid central authority simply because there's single points of failure in a system. So what's trust? I mean, it has a lot of sort of street definitions. This is right straight out of the dictionary. Firm belief in reliability, building the strength to trust someone or something. Relations are built on trust. In law, it's the confidence you place in a person, making that person the nominal owner of property to be held for the benefit of one or more others. The really old definition of trust was to allow credit to a customer. Layman, or a Canadian farmer version, says that you'll do what you'll say you'll do when you say you'll do it, and I have confidence that you'll do that. And the second part of that's kind of interesting. It's deliberately vague. It's your word, I'm as good as my word. A reputation takes a lifetime to build, and I think Winston Churchill said 15 minutes to destroy. You'll do what you'll say you'll do, which is to say your word is good, but you also do it when you say you'll do it, and so there's a time element. You'll do this, I will mow your lawn tomorrow, I will fix your house in 3 weeks. There's a dual meaning there. Vitally important, because if you don't have firsthand knowledge of your trading partner, you have nothing to go on. This is just sort of anonymous person X. Am I good-natured? Am I good-hearted? Do I trust strangers? Maybe yes, maybe on the internet, probably not such a good idea. So all you really have to go on from an information standpoint is a person's reputation. So these are the beliefs or opinions that's generally held about someone. Good name, character, repute, standing, position, renown, esteem, prestige. And it's all we have. If you know nothing else about a person, all you have is the reputation. So there's a lot of talk about we don't need to trust anybody. This is cryptocurrency. We just have to trust the math and the network and the miners. And there's really no trust there. We have self-enforcing smart contracts, but that's not completely true. In my opinion, we're sort of swapping out the stack of trust from the traditional centralized one to a decentralized one. We're flattening it a little bit. So first you have to trust yourself, which is kind of obvious, but you're assuming you're not, mentally ill, or you're assuming you're mentally competent. But if you think about things like New Year's resolution, I'm going to lose 20 pounds. How often do we renege on that agreement? Something closer to home, BitTorrent. I'm going to ship this new module in 3 weeks, no problem. I have the algorithm in the back of my head. I've done it once before. 3 weeks, and if you've ever done software estimation scheduling, like I was a project manager, Yeah, sure. If everything goes well, no showstoppers, no unforeseen glitches. Can you trust yourself? Yes, you have to. Decentralized stack, you have to trust the math, and in many cases we don't know the math. I haven't looked at Bitcoin D in detail. I don't know exactly how SHA-256 works off the top of my head. So if I don't know that, I have to trust that the developers who wrote the code did a good job. So I'm trusting people that have reviewed their code. Many eyeballs, open source. I'm trusting the network and the miners. In Bitcoin, we now have a mining pool that has 51% of the mining capability. Nothing to be concerned about. Of course, I have to trust my trading partners not to default, walk away with my money. And there's an optional thing that Ethereum, you can actually trust sort of a larger decentralized organization. On a centralized system, we have all these trusted intermediaries in the middle. We have brokers, we have banks, but we have recourse. There's not a lot of recourse here. In the centralized system, we have recourse to the legal system and to government, as inefficient and as painful and as expensive as that is. So it's not trustless. We're swapping out our trust stack. And we're shrinking the community because we're not really putting our faith behind intermediaries, institutions, civil institutions, and government. We're basically, Bitcoin is kind of returning us to the village, and so is cryptocurrency in general, where the number of people that you'll keep close tabs on at any given point, your Dunbar number is about 150 for the average person. You probably, if you look at the people that you know, the people that are in your phone book, your smartphone, the people that you keep tabs on, and have a good idea of how trustworthy they are, it's about 150. You'll run into about 10,000 people in your lifetime. Most of those will be completely impersonal, transactions, and you'll have no they won't add to your Dunbar number on average. And online, the environment we live in, it's very easy to create new identities. I can create a new synonym and I can burn a synonym, and there's very low cost of doing that, which opens us up to Sybil attacks where we just create a bunch of sock puppets and no one really knows that we're all the same person. Traditional legal recourse is difficult. If we're doing something in Ethereum or even in Bitcoin, what legal jurisdiction do we fall under? Is it multi-country? It's going to take a lot of time and effort, international law, to resolve something between two geographically distant jurisdictions. And everything on the blockchain is open and transparent, which is a nice thing. We have sort of forced transparency. So these are some of the parameters around the cryptocurrency space we live in. And so when you're building an online reputation system, there are parts to it. And so there's this good book, this O'Reilly book, Building Web Reputation Systems. It's a 2010 O'Reilly book. Randall Farmer did a lot of the early work on virtual community. And basically the parts, the basic parts of reputation are things like a source, let's say me, makes a claim about a target. Say I like or I upvote this Reddit article. But sources, there can be all kinds of sources and all kinds of targets. I could say, John is a good trading partner. I can make an explicit claim. I can formally make a claim against somebody. I can say, this person violated terms of service, or this person, I'm giving back reviews. This person did a great job mowing my lawn. That's an explicit claim. Implicit is, I visited this article 2 or 3 times. In fact, many people have visited this article. They've behaved implicitly that they like the article because it just gets so many hits. So when you're rating content, there's a lot of explicit versus implicit reputation around a piece of content that you might be rating. It can be global. Your credit score, your FICO, sort of follows you everywhere. People use it for all kinds of reasons they shouldn't, not just to lend you money, but whether you're fit to have a job in a certain field. Intelligence in banking, for example, to look at your credit score, even though it's not the best indicator. Versus local. No one's going to confuse my Yahoo chess rating with my credit rating. I wish they did. No, actually, I don't wish they did. But, for example, it's context specific. So the problem with global reputation is sometimes people will use it out of context in an inappropriate way. So reputation is best context specific. And there's a bunch of ways of making different claims for things. I can say, qualitative, I can post a little, word entry. This article was great because, this restaurant was great because the clams were fine, the service was excellent, the price was reasonable. Quantitative, I can rate it on a scale of 1 to 100. I can rate it raw, I can normalize it. Most programmers will take these numerical ratings and basically generate a number between 0.0 and 1.0. ranked. I can rank, these are the top 5 restaurants in my neighborhood. Scalar, I can give it 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 stars. Claim types. Roll-ups, once a number of these claims have been crunched together, they can be counted, they can be accumulated, there can be averages, there can be ratios. And then you can basically take these Lego building blocks and create a fairly complex system, a reputation system out of them. And basically these sort of create a visual grammar that's sometimes used in the book. So this is a fairly simple vote to promote of articles. So for example, here I'm thinking the raw sum of votes on an article, thumbs up, thumbs down, it's vote to promote, right? But I'm also looking at, it's not simply vote to promote like on Reddit, I'm also looking at how many hits the article got. So if there's an activity level, if someone hits it, that goes up. And then I weight it. I basically say, well, the actual claim, the vote, is worth 10 times a page hit is worth. And then using that, I can weight it, and then I can create a sort of an interest ranking or an interest rating for this article. So this is an example of a fairly simple reputation model. It's articles ranked not only according to endorsements, but the amount of discussion they generate or the amount of activity they generate. Page views, how many comments have been posted related to them. That's an example of like how you would diagram out a basic reputation system. So rating content. Quite common, forums do this. Reddit does this, Stack Exchange does this, Quora does this. Various models. So for content, you've got models like favorites and flags, vote to promote, flag abusive content. You've got karma. If I'm actually the target's a person, John's a great guy, John now has karma. So karma is like when I'm rating a user. And there's a number of different types of karma. There's participation karma. So say John posts 1 or 2 great quality articles, but that's all he does. Well, he'll have high quality karma, but very low participation karma. So often what they'll do is they'll take how much John participates, let's say, and then the quality of his contribution, and they'll merge that together to give you a robust karma score. The robust karma score just sort of measures John's overall contribution to the community. It's quality plus the quantity of participation. This or that voting, was this review helpful? In some cases there's transitive trust, like do I trust this reviewer? So you can actually trust somebody and yet not trust them to review other people. So for example, I have a roommate and he's a very trustworthy fellow, but he's also very naive. So I'm going to trust him to pay my rent on time. I am not going to trust him with a recommendation to loan somebody some money. So, was this review helpful? Yes or no voting. Yelp and Yahoo do this. Transactions like eBay, ratings, reviews, and points. And then, something that's sort of cropped up a lot, and you can mix and match these. Most of these sites mix these in a pretty complex way or have all of the elements of them. Achievements and badges. I mean, even on our Ethereum forum, we have achievements and badges. Your gamer score on Xbox. Simple things that you can do to basically get public recognition. You're awarded a badge if, you kill 10 gremlins. You're awarded a badge if you posted 10 comments or 100 comments or 1,000 comments. Stack Exchange has hundreds of these things. Some of them have been awarded a million times. Some of them have awarded, I've seen a few that are awarded like 15 or 16. The gold ones especially are quite rare. What I'm talking about tonight mostly is something that kind of replaces the eBay way of making sure, or basically the eBay method of scoring the reputation on a transaction. So I'm talking about a transaction where someone buys and sells a physical good, although it could be used for other things. So we have some problems, right? This is the semi-anonymous internet. And just before I get to this, so you can see that depending on what the goals of your community are, that's the reason I spent so much time in the beginning, depending on what the goals of your community are, what you want to do is you want to try to incentivize a certain type of behavior. It's often, you don't want to coerce people, but you want to incentivize people. So for example, in BitTorrent, I would have to imagine that you have the Seeders versus Leechers problem, and you probably still do, and everyone wants Game of Thrones, but no one seeds it. So what do? Well, I think what you probably want to do is you want to find the most popular content, and then you want to incentivize the behavior that will maximize the propagation of that content throughout the network so people can get what they want, maximize the value of the network for the end user, and by extension the company. So, what are some things you can do? I mean, in the really old BBS days, we used to have upload-download ratios. The problem with that is, 1% of the people actually generate content, 10% of the people match it up, integrate it, and distribute it, and then the other 89% of people just consume it. So, 1-to-1 upload-download ratio doesn't work. There are other things that you can do with a system like Ethereum. You could have a proof of upload or seeded bandwidth coin. You could award a subcurrency based on how much was seeded. Find some way of rewarding people for the good behavior on the network, minimizing the punishment, because punishment's not anywhere near as effective as reward and public recognition. So it's sort of the 80-20 rule around that. So there are things that you could do with an app coin in Ethereum, a subcurrency, that might, and there's some papers for doing this, ways of sort of promoting seeding, responsible seeding. So, problem, you're trying to buy something on eBay, and eBay can be gamed. There's a few things that eBay does, a lot of things that eBay does to stop fraud and gaming the system. One of the things they do is they have feedback. So, sellers have feedback. They have a number of stars, a rating. It's pretty complicated. But this is the internet. And so I can have a Sybil attack where I just create 50 sock puppets, and we all trade small or even large quantities amongst ourselves because, hey, I'm only passing money to and from myself. And pretty soon 6 months later, I garnered a fairly good reputation. And then I go out and I zap John, my unsuspecting unknown guy. He sees me, I have a great reputation, and I commit a fraudulent transaction against him. And eBay's sort of way around that is to use the soft money of PayPal, where usually at the expense of the merchant, you'll get refunded. It takes 6 months to really fully commit a PayPal transaction. It's kind of reversible until then. And a lot of merchants don't want to deal with that. They want to deal with hard money. They want to pay me cash and treat it that way. And so what can you do in a place like that where you have this ability to host these Sybil attacks, these sock puppet attacks? Once you've burned that particular identity, you can create a whole bunch of new ones called whitewashing. So there's Sybil attacks with whitewashing. Do it all again, right? And I guess what they're really trying to do in eBay is just make it so labor intensive that it's not really worth your time to launch these attacks. But there have been issues with it. So what do you want to be able to do? You want to have agents that accurately estimate risk. You don't want sock puppets to just say, yes, I'm a great person, but I'm really somebody else. You want to hold them liable if the references don't check out. You want to avoid risk and ensure transactions. You don't want to have any advantage to the Sybil attack. Creating multiple identities should not be able to help you. You don't want to trust a central authority like eBay or Visa or MasterCard. And the way to get around this is that anyone can issue a reference. So the basic idea of TrustDavis is, I'm going to sell John my car, and I'm going to sell it for $1,000. But what we're going to do is, he doesn't really know me that well. So what we're going to do is but I do have people that know me. He has people that know him, and so we're going to purchase insurance from these agents. So I'm going to purchase a reference. I'm going to pay a small premium because I'm well trusted. Cost me maybe $30 or $40 for, say, $1,000 in liability by default will be paid to John, and he'll do the same for me. And then once we have enough of these where I won't lose any money if either of us default, and he won't lose any money if either of us default, then we have sort of a cash flow that we're covered, we're safe. Who's on the hook? The insurers are on the hook. So we are paying them like an insurance premium, and they are assuming the liability. So if they, like any insurance company, if they inaccurately gauge the risk for our default, and we default too many times, of course they're going to lose money and probably go out of business, but that's insurance, that's the insurance business. So the idea is we're aligning incentives. If we do a clean deal, okay, the insurance company makes money, we get the car transacted, we've paid very little in insurance because we're trustworthy, everybody wins. If either of us default, in a no false claim scenario, if either of us default, well, we're both covered financially. Both the buyer and seller are covered financially. The insurance companies take a bath, but my reputation and John's reputation also falls quite a bit. The next time I go to do a car deal with John, and they've seen in the reputation system that we've had one prior bad transaction for the same amount, they will either not issue us those references, in which case we're back to square one, law of the jungle, or our insurance premiums will be quite high because we've defaulted in the past. We're not a good risk. Our probability for defaulting has gone up. So that's basically what TrustDavis is, and it's about 10 years old, and it sounds kind of complicated, right? It sounds like, oh, I've got to get this transaction insurance on both sides, and what if the insurance company doesn't pay up? Then what do you do? So these are all problems that Dimitri DeFigueiredo and Barr were puzzling over at UC Davis. And this was, by the way, a very well-cited article. Won a couple of awards, actually. But, there were issues. So, like, here's an example of a transaction for a watch. And it looks pretty complicated. I've only got half of it up here. But we're buying a watch for $150. There's the VS is the seller. There's the buyer. It's $150, but we have like 3 insurance companies that are sort of involved, giving us various amounts of money if the other defaults, so that both the buyer and the seller are covered if there's a default, but the insurance companies are out of money. Pretty complicated network of transactions just for a $150 watch. There's just something to notice. There's a V2 up here, this guy. This is sort of like the reinsurance AIG sort of fellow. And the funny thing about that is with Ethereum, that's a middleman, that's an intermediary. With Ethereum, you don't need that. So we can actually simplify this. This isn't going to take off because this is a lot of hassle to go through for a $150 watch, right? You don't need to do that with Ethereum. You can cut that person right out. So here are the key ideas. You have incentive compatibility. You have incentive to insure. You don't have incentive to change your name. You want to save gains in excess of the opportunity cost. You can profit by charging for references. Buyers and sellers are insured. But Ethereum makes this easier. There was like a V2 person in that diagram. The insurance company was insuring the insurer. It's like reinsurance. So if the insurance company fails, well then I'll take care of you. But if we both fail, you're out of luck. Well, that goes away. There are no reinsurers, because in Ethereum what you can do is you can hold all of the references or all of the insurance policies in the contract itself as escrow. So I'm going to do a deal with John on Ethereum. I'm going to create a smart contract. It's going to say I'm going to sell you a car for $1,000, and I'm going to get 1 or 2 references that add up to $1,000. We're going to put that in the contract. The insurance companies will put the money in escrow on that contract. You'll get a couple of references, add up to $1,000. That'll go in the contract. So what will happen is we'll use a form style contract that can be verified. So we'll use basically a contract. It'll store the buyer's and the seller's address. It'll store the amount for the transaction. It's $1,000. We'll just make sure it's going to expire after a certain amount of time if no one does anything. If we both give it the thumbs up, the deal happens. The insurance companies get their premiums, no claims. Everyone's happy. We post to the reputation system contract that we did a clean deal, and in future our premiums will probably go down and our reputation will go up. If it expired, on the other hand, we may or may not refund the premiums because nothing happened. The deal didn't go through at all, but it didn't fail. The escrow will go back to the insurers. The buyer's funds will go back to the buyer. If it failed, I'm still going to pay John. He's still going to give me or not give me the car. Either one of us can say it failed. We are going to get our claim automatically from the insurance companies. They're going to be out of some money. They're still going to get our premium because we bought a policy. And then we're going to register a failure in the reputation system. So the transaction failed. Next time we go to do this, they're going to double our premium or just say no, probably. So this is a way to basically, although you don't trust someone up front, if you have people that trust you and are willing to insure your transaction, you can actually do a fairly large deal this way, and we sort of get out of the mode where we have just a plain escrow. So what's the problem with a plain escrow, the simple one? So let's do it the simple way. John and I want to do a $1,000 transaction. We both agree on an escrow agent, Christian, and we give him the $1,000, and he's going to see if the deal is clean or not as the arbitrator / escrow agent. What are you doing when you pay an escrow? You're paying the escrow agent not to walk off with your $1,000. So you pay him a little bit of funding for that.
Well, John doesn't check if the deal was clear and honest. That's the thing. But I'm sorry, go on.
Yeah. So like just for example, so we're picking this agent. You pay an escrow agent not to walk off with your money at the expense of his reputation, so that he gets more business in the future. There's a problem with that. What if there's a side collusion of some kind? What if John does a deal with me where I cheat John, let's say, and I do a side deal with Christian, secret collusion, and basically what happens is Christian will award me the money if I kick him back something. This happens all the time. This is the problem with escrow, right? I mean, this can happen, secret collusion. Well, with Ethereum, first of all, the contract holds the funds. You can have an arbiter, but you don't really need one. You could have like sort of a no-fault insurance. If either one of us, for whatever reason, buyer or seller, says it's a bad deal, we can just, pull that trigger and the claims are settled either way. So the buyer and the seller are covered. Everyone's incentivized to do a clean deal. And there could even be variants to this. So like I was talking about, the first variant, no false claim, you can not worry about who's at fault. We either trigger all the insurance or we don't. False claim with arbitration, they can designate Christian, but he doesn't hold the funds, so it's based on the ruling, and people will end up rating the arbitrator, but no false claims is easier and cleaner. Revocable references, so say I'm an insurance company and I find out something else about one of my trading partners that I don't like, I could pull the funds back out before the transaction happens. That's possible. Or maybe I want to take my money and I want to invest it somewhere else. I see a better opportunity. Invested escrow. So the problem with escrow is it's dead money. It's sort of money that's just sitting there in a warehouse or in safekeeping, but it's not earning anything. It's dead money. So very recently there have been some cryptocurrencies. There's a cryptocurrency company that's now taking, I think it's Bitcoin denominated deposits, interest bearing. So you could have the smart contract decide, let's say this expiry is the equivalent of 30 days, either through block time or through Chronos or some other oracle. 30 days, if nothing happens, then everyone's refunded. But the problem with that is, okay, we didn't do a deal, but our money was tied up for 30 days. What if during that time that the money's tied up, it's in an interest-bearing savings account somewhere, and then the contract will just deposit it and withdraw it once the contract is settled, either successfully or unsuccessfully. And then the big thing is we're trying to move away from escrow to a reputation system. So you want to write to a reputation registry. So once this contract's completed, whether it's expired, successful or unsuccessful, or failed, I should say, you want to write this to a registry. So this registry will basically say, Andrew and John did a successful deal for $1,000, or it might say, John and Andrew did an unsuccessful or a failed deal for $1,000. Here were the references. And now you have sort of like a centralized credit rating agency, except for the following. First of all, everyone has a copy of all of the data. It's fully transparent. Everyone has a copy of it. And furthermore, other people outside of this organization can actually add value to it. Maybe there's a notes field. Maybe I put in a comment that it's about cars. Maybe if someone wants to aggregate it all and take a look at my transactions on cars versus my transactions on board games versus my transactions on, labor, let's say. So you can get a very distinct and discrete kind of view of, through third parties that are taking a look at this data, a view of a person's credit history. And you could also basically implement that as a coin that you don't circulate. So your score is a coin in Ethereum. It's just it doesn't go anywhere. The coin is only manipulated by that contract. You can't buy and sell reputation as a coin. Although in theory, what you could do is sort of like some people do with MMO games. You could sort of level up your character, and then I could sort of sell John my wallet or my identity. Probably not something you'd want to do if it was ever tied to something that would identify you biologically, like my name or my social security number. But it does monetize your reputation to some extent. You can do that. So now we have an automated, simplified version of TrustDavis on the blockchain. We have accurate ratings. It can't be exploited. It's tolerant to pseudonym change. It's decentralized. We're basically bootstrapping dead money escrow to a reputation model. So it's a bunch of like papers. So the TrustDavis papers at the top. There's a whole book, 2010 by Farmer and Glass. Randall Farmer did a lot of that early virtual world, virtual community work. Building reputation systems, all the tools, all the Lego blocks for building a reputation system. Big case study on Yahoo because they worked together on there. There's a whole book on trust by Francis Fukuyama, and he's kind of a controversial neocon figure. Basically, he's sort of extolling the virtues of the old system where, modern industrial countries have sort of anonymized trust in civil institutions, and that fosters predictability and makes for frictionless business, and everything kind of runs more smoothly as opposed to other types of societies where it's all sort of trust ends at the family border and there's a lot of sort of collusion and corruption and bribery. But I think we're kind of shrinking the village a little bit, and we're going back to the village model because given what we've seen recently, we don't really trust big government as much as we used to, if we ever did. The last article is quite interesting. It talks about reputation in a system like Ripple. So in the Ripple system, you have a distributed general ledger. It's not a blockchain, it's mined. And what you have is you have a bunch of nodes, and each of the nodes, and I'm talking about Ripple 1.0, the original Ryan Fugger Ripple. You have a bunch of nodes where I'm going to extend credit to my neighbor, like I would in a large sort of extended family. I trust my dad for $3,000 or $4,000, my sister for $200, my friend Jeff for $10, and we just keep building this network out. And then between the nodes of this network, I have like a localized trust. I know exactly how much I trust Dad, my sister, and Jeff. But if we actually sum up the credit relationships between all of us in the network, I also have a global reputation. That's an interesting way of doing things, and there's been talk about using that. But the authors, DeFigueiredo Barr, they prefer sort of more of a local metric for credit and trust. And one of the reasons is this: if my local network, let's say I'm in a school and I'm in 5th grade or something, and I'm pretty street savvy, and I trust the people around me, but boy are they naive. They just give, they're all way more naive than I am, or they're much more jaded than I am, and very untrusting. That's not a good reflection. So the global score is not a good reflection of how I truly feel about a given person. So just something to think about. That's kind of trust on Ethereum. Any questions, comments? Sure.
Do you think there's some types of contracts and transactions that lend themselves more naturally to a reputation based sort of trust system rather than an escrow? Because one advantage of Ethereum in some cases is that I understand that you could have a trustless contract where a reputation system would really be inapplicable. But
Yeah.
which specific circumstances would be better?
So there's one that comes to mind, and like one of them is ratings, which is sort of an aggregate trust metric. Like let's say I'm doing a review of a restaurant, right?
Mm.
Should I go eat there? When I'm reviewing a restaurant, it's not a escrow my money and did I legally provide you the meal? It's more of an aggregate score of how do I feel about the service, the quality of the food, the decor, the server's attitude, things like that, or things where I have to perform. It's not just things that are not binary. If I just have to perform or not perform, and I'm not worried about tying up my money without earning anything on it for short amounts of time, escrow is the way to go. Trust is minimized. I'm only really trusting the network and the code and the math, right? But if I have to tie up a large sum of money for a long period of time, if there's some kind of quality aspect to what's being delivered, there's a qualitative aspect to what's being delivered. Yeah, I want to start looking at reputation because I need to know what I'm getting, and it's not always a binary function. I need to know that I can expect a certain level of quality, which is either has to be quantified on multiple scales or is purely qualitative. Like if I'm commissioning a piece of art, yeah, did you deliver the piece of art? Sure, here's the escrow. Is it garbage? Well, it doesn't help me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I need to know the reputation of the artist, right? There's some of that. So for complex things, I take a look at reputation. It makes it run more smoothly. You know what you're getting.
Do you think like for some markets, a reputation-only based system would facilitate more economic activity than because of the difficulties?
Yeah,
Like,
the argument is that it cuts down friction, and if you do pure escrow and you do 100% full securitization of something, you're tying up an awful lot of money, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's no risk. I'm tying up an awful lot of dead money for up to 30 days.
Yeah.
And that's why they don't do it. They work off credits. I mean, even today, if you walk around, it's all about your credit score, right? So that's a reputation metric. They don't actually. When I came here from Canada, right, I had no credit at all because they don't share the scores between countries. It was like I was Ted Kaczynski walking out of the cave. To get my $500 credit limit, I had to give them $500. Okay, those days are long over. I've built my credit rating.
Right.
I got my 50K, you know, and it's not an issue now, but in the beginning, yes. And you know, if you really don't know somebody, fully securitize it. But that ties up a lot of money unnecessarily. You can back off and use reputation after that.
Yeah.
You want to get to that. You want to go from escrow to reputation.
All right, let's cover Alex and John, and we're
So talking about reputation system for, say, applicable to market. If this market is a high frequency one, what would be the complexities of implementing reputation system where the reputation fluctuates like every second, every minute? But it really depends.
You know, I didn't talk about implicit reputation too much. It's funny you say that. There's some applications where you do implicit reputation very quickly, and that's, for example, spam filtering.
Mm-hmm.
You don't actually store. Now, normally you would, by the way, store this reputation in a database somewhere. Here we would store it on the blockchain. But for spam, you kind of have to quickly calculate the score and you've set a threshold. You calculate the score of the email that comes in. If it's above the line, it goes into the inbox, and if it's below the line, it goes into the spam folder. In systems like that, you use implicit. You throw away the results of the calculation after you've processed it, and you have to process it as quickly as possible. So spam filtration is an example of your complex reputation system where it's high frequency.
Interesting. Thank you.
John.
I'll take my question offline. Thanks.
All right, cool. Well, thanks everybody.